Every woman needs to take that universal path to find self-worth, a voice, and a cherished life. That path is the heroine's journey, the roadmap to an amazing adventure that women travel to discover their true selves. The heroine's journey is not about getting on your superpowers and going out to fight the lions, tigers, and bears of the outside world with your might. That would be the hero's journey. This woman's journey is the internal journey that a woman takes to grow her courage and strength and travel to her best life.
Heroines, so glad you're here. And I've got exciting news. The Heroine's Journey book is out and for you. It's going to show you how your life can move along so beautifully and gracefully. Go get the book now at heroinesbook.com. Journey onward.
I'm so nervous because I'm so excited to say that that Joan and I have a special guest today. Dorothy Rosen is coming to us from Chicago, and she started her very own heroine's journey with the death of a loved one, and has kind of turned around what she learned in business to support herself and the women in her life by creating is it a company? Is it a group? Basically called...
What is it? It's an organism.
It's an organization.
It is an organization. Yeah.
Called Women Belong, which is basically there to build a platform to support women by seeing them, listening to them, and letting them know that they matter in a networking environment. Mm-hmm. And I love, when we were talking kind of offline, she was saying that her headline is, I am imperfectly perfect. Mm-hmm. So please all welcome Dorothy Rosen.
Dorothy, I'm so excited to have you here today. Of course, you and I, when we met, it was instant connection, and we couldn't stop talking. And, that's so much what both you and I want, is for women to talk openly, not just about, our latest purchase of clothing or, the guy, but those things that really matter to women, to speak up with a voice that can really impact the conversation of the sisterhood. And I'm so excited because there are 3 women on this podcast today who are taking that on. So welcome with us. We're delighted to have you. We hope you'll tell us a little bit about your story, why your organization grew and what it means to you, because like me, we don't do this stuff without having it be very heartfelt and emotional at the same time. Yeah. So it's a delight to have you. Thank you so much.
Oh my goodness, Erin and Joan, I'm delighted to be here with you. And Joan, I absolutely love when we get on the phone and I never want to get off, right? The conversations start and they just keep going. Mm-hmm. So to start on the heroine's journey, or is it heroine? It's heroine, right?
We say heroine.
We say
it can be said heroine too, but our pronunciation is heroine, which is a little more distinctive, which is why I like it.
Well, and I think it's important, right? It's important for us to understand the masculine versus the feminine. And so my story on the heroine's journey actually started after my husband had passed away. I didn't realize it had actually started during that. It did. Mm-hmm. Right? But my daughter said to me, Mom, I really think you need to go on an eat, pray, love journey. And I thought, oh my God, that is perfect. That's exactly what I want to do. And then I started thinking about it.
And by eat, pray, love journey, you were really referring to Liz Gilbert, who we refer to in the opening chapter of the book as being a real light for us that I don't think women are completely accounting for yet. Right. But you were saying that you needed to go on a similar journey. She went off to eat in Italy, pray in
India,
and love in Thailand. So
yes, right. Well, I think it was, wasn't it? I want to think it was Bali that she went to. Anywhere, whatever. In the movie, right? She finds Javier Bardem in Bali, and she falls in love. And I'm thinking, well, first of all, I don't look like Julia, right? And I was intimidated thinking about this whole thing, right? Like, do I have to come up with a plan, right? Because like the structure is always so important. Where am I going? What am I going to do? Am I going to explore the history of the place? What am I going to do? Where am I going? And so I got very intimidated by the whole thing, but I kept talking about it. And I decided to book a week in Estes Park, which is where my soul lives, oftentimes, and where my mother's ashes are scattered, my father's ashes, and my husband's ashes are all scattered there. And don't tell the Rocky Mountain National Park that, but right. And we were, and I was alone in this cabin, and all of a sudden, something happened, which was like I was off balance. And I came back and I thought, well, oh, first of all, someone had said to me, you mean you're going on your hero's journey? So I started to examine that, right? I watched Finding Joe on about Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, and I started to analyze, well, where am I at on the journey? And thinking, because I didn't know about the heroine's journey at that point. And there were so many messages that were coming through. One was that from a book I think called Lincoln Highway, was that the individual, the hero, starts in the middle. He doesn't know he's in his journey until the middle. I'm like, oh, okay. And another thing from Joseph Campbell was that the Knights of the Round Table, that we all enter the forest when they went on their journey, on their crusade. They were all looking for the golden chalice, and where did they go? They all entered the woods from their own entry points and went on their own path. So, okay, it's got to be my own path, and I'm going to find myself in the middle of it. That's what I got from that. So I came back and I found out I was diagnosed. I was exhausted, and there was something wrong with my body, and I was exhausted with and diagnosed with something called hemolytic anemia. Okay.
Wow.
Right. And I knew because
So you got hit from a couple of sides.
Right. It was, well, the messages keep coming through, don't they?
Which is typical. It's usually not one thing. It's
Right.
usually multiple things.
It would.
And to make the point here too is that I always get irritated with people who say, choose your heroine's journey. I'm like, you don't choose it. It chooses you. Something comes along that's major and lands you flat on the start of the heroine's journey. And you're describing those things, which were, in the relationship area with your husband and in the physical area with the considerations you had for your own body. So
yeah.
That definitely was your thrust onto the heroine's journey.
Absolutely. And I was sitting there in the emergency room because the urgent care doctor called and said, have you ever considered going to the hospital? I'm like, okay. And I'm looking at the blood work and I'm thinking, I am so screwed, because I could see my hemoglobin was wrong. Because after dealing with Steve's stuff for 5 years, I knew how to read all those things, right? We as women get smart, and we figure this stuff out. So I took myself to the hospital. And I knew I needed a blood transfusion. And
oh my gosh.
So yeah, I was sitting there, and that's when it hit me that I was in the middle of the journey. And why it hit me was I was sitting in a chair that I'd sat in many times before, because Steve was in the hospital a lot, sitting in that emergency room waiting to be cared for. And then Scott, the nurse, came out, the triage nurse, and he's the guy who used to take care of Steve. And I live in a metropolitan area. I am not living in a small little city here, right? So Scott came out, and then Angel was the how clear is the message, right? Angel, the nurse, was the woman who took care of me back in the emergency room, got me set up for my transfusion. And I just sat there and I was like, I have been here before, but I was on the other side. And I was the person who was the caregiver, and now I'm the person who needs to be cared for. And also, where's my resilience? Where's my strength? What do I know? How can I advocate for myself? Because there was no one in that room to advocate for me like I had advocated for Steve.
And that's the point too. When you hit it, you're flooded with questions. That's the point of the heroine's journey. It
Right.
wakes you up to having to ask some bigger questions in your life. And when they ask the questions, you're like, oh my God, like they're such big questions. What are the answers?
Yeah. So that's how it all started. And we'd already started Women Belong about 2.5 years earlier than that. And that was because of, being in corporate America and really not ever feeling like I belonged. But all of a sudden, these two converged.
How did they converge?
Well, so I think that one of the things that's most important in both networking and in the heroine's journey is being vulnerable, being authentic. And that realization of where I was on the heroine's journey took me to a whole nother level of what does it mean to be authentic? What does it mean to be vulnerable? Because I could cry all the time about Steve, but how about being vulnerable about what's really going on with me and not having to pretend that I'm strong all the time? I don't know. Have you ever pretended that you're strong?
Oh, all the time.
We had that conversation yesterday about how in your youth you can pretend and you can generally pull it off. But Aaron and I were saying, but then you reach this point that for a variety of different things, whether it's menopause or it's a major event in your life or it's a financial crisis, suddenly you're just not superwoman like you thought you were. And superwoman is taking the hero's journey. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the heroine's journey, which is an internal journey. So you were thrust internally in that moment.
Yeah.
Saying, oh my gosh, what's in here? What scaffolding have I built in here? What questions are just going to bubble up now? And importantly, how do I go forward?
Yeah, the word in is in heroine's journey, right?
I like that.
Going within
Uh-huh.
For the hero. And I think it's so easy, not so easy, but it is part of who I am as a woman. And I think for many women, advocating for others is something that it's so easy to do in some ways, right? We're fighting for others. We are fighting for what's right for others. But when it comes to advocating for ourselves, oh boy, how many times have I, swallowed the words or swallowed the requests that I wanted to make? Right.
So what was your first step once you realized you were on the heroine's journey? I mean, you could have at that moment taken what was happening as a fait accompli, unfortunately. And I think that's part of the process. Did you have some immediate things that came to mind or?
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind was when the doctor told me that this is an autoimmune condition that doesn't go away. And I had read up and I'm like, oh, there are instances where it goes away and it's going to go away. I have decided that I am going to be okay. And so it led me on a journey for my health in a different way, right? I don't know. For me, people used to say to me something like, oh, well, when you look in the mirror, the only way I ever looked in the mirror was in the rear view mirror when I was driving a car. I did not stand in front of a mirror putting on makeup. I would put on my makeup in the car as I drove. I did put on mascara at stoplights. Okay. All right. Excuse me.
Good for you.
Right. But my head was not necessarily connected to my body.
Heroines, thanks for being with me. There's a really big idea that I want to tell you about, and that's the heroine's journey. Are you like worried or concerned about your life? I was. Has something big come along and just rocked you? Maybe thrown your apple cart straight up in the air. And when you ask yourself, are you really living the life of joy, prosperity, and freedom that you want to live? You know, life is for us to enjoy, not for us to suffer through. And that's what the heroine's journey is all about. It's your roadmap to a life that you love. You can have it. It's at theheroinesbook.com. I've written it for you. I can't wait for you to read it. And I'd love you to give me your feedback. You make a really important point there. And I think that's the world that we, you, me, grew up in,
Right.
where we learn to disconnect our heads from our bodies because we lived in our heads.
Absolutely.
And our bodies were just something to motor us. We didn't really pay attention or consider, or part of me going to work on Wall Street was to become male. And to become male, I had to lift up into my head and do everything up there. So then there's a reattachment moment where you have to put this head back on this body and say, hey, they all belong together. And guess what? Without the body, what's the head going to do?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, they're teachers you pick up along the way. Regina Tomhauser, a great teacher. I'm sure you know who she is, right? She wrote the book Pussy, and is known as Mama Gina.
Uh-huh.
And and Emily Nagoski, all of these women who are writers who I hadn't been paying attention to.
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth Lesser. I mean, there's so many books, right? We could walk into my office and grab them all, and I'd love to share them all. But
Those were the angels who were showing up in your life.
absolutely,
Because truly, you cannot go forward without the input of some angels who come with resources and things that you just don't have.
Yeah. And
Did you
be open
have,
to learning.
yeah. Did you have angels? Because those are angels in books. So they're like you read their message and you take it in that way. But did you have angels that showed up in your life physically?
I think they show up every day.
Aww.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Don't they? For me, they do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't always know that they're there,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the simple stuff, right? It's the simple, the physical, the real, the whatever we want to call the real world, whether it's a call from my daughter, the reach out, the friend who asks a question that's meaningful, or who just shows up and wants to chat. And oftentimes it's they need something, but I always get something from it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think they're always showing up, Erin.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so beautiful to think of it as not a momentary thing, but an ongoing thing that is always happening and always something to be grateful for or thankful for.
I want to be more woo-woo, by the way. I really do. I mean, I talk to shamans and high priestesses and I get all this stuff. And there are times when I'm like, yeah, really? I don't know. But then stuff happens. I'm like, okay, I hear it. I'm paying attention. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because you have to pay attention to those voices, because that's a big part of what asks you the next question, shows you the next move, illustrates something that can happen, invokes your hope. I mean, and it's so easy to say to yourself, voice go away. It's all that garbage that comes up. I don't trust you. I'm not going to listen to you. But yet, truly, it's an act of humility at that point to just sit back and go, okay, I'm listening. I may not understand it all at this point, but I'm listening because I know life doesn't work against me. Life works for me.
Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
you're on your heroine's journey.
Right. Yeah. There was, Aaron, you had brought up earlier the imperfectly perfect.
Mhm.
And I was on a boat. This was in 2017. I was on a boat down the Mekong Delta with a group of people. And we were asked to reflect on what we had seen, which was this cave of thousands and thousands of Buddhas, thousands of them
Wow.
that are sent there. Do you know of this cave?
But I'm certainly looking it up after this.
Okay. And I can share pictures with you, but there are thousands of Buddhas in these caves. And why are they sent there? Because they are broken, they are missing an arm, a nose, they're burnished too much. And so when new Buddhas are sent to the temples, then the old ones are sent to
That's cool.
this cave. And I was reflecting on that. And as I was reflecting on it, what I realized is that they were so beautiful because they were imperfect. And that the imperfections, my imperfections, are what makes me perfect, right?
Yeah.
And we keep trying to change them and, do better and all this stuff and become perfect. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Spoiler alert, I swear. But there's really just an opportunity for us to, and Joan, you were talking about this, the identity of like living into our identity. It's when we get that message that I am not perfect like this iPhone, right? If I was perfect, I would just be as boring as this and look like everybody else. And I'm not.
Right.
So
it broke you open to have this experience. And the first thing you did was you asked questions, and then you started to bring in the resources from outside your life.
and to live it.
What was next?
Well, another moment of opening, if you will. I mean, there've been so many. I mean, Steve's journey was all about learning that there was no control on the exterior. So, right, that's part of the heroine's journey, right? Is just letting go of this feeling that we can control stuff, because we can't control. I mean, I can control myself, and that's it. I can't control my children. I can't control my guy. I can't control my business, really. All I can do is what I can do. That's it. And I get to decide what that is.
I feel kind of like that falls back into you had started to say, and to live it, when Joan was asking you about like your life and kind of after that moment. And I feel like that flows into what you were just saying, which is, as opposed to being worried about everything that's out there and how can you change it and how can you affect it and make it perfect, you kind of take it inside and you're like, okay.
I mean, I actually am seeing an arc to this story that I don't think I saw until this conversation.
Oh, good. Share,
Right?
please.
So there's like the most recent experience was I went to Guatemala on a soul journey with 14 other women. And we're in the middle of this lake, Lake Atitlan, which has, I think, 3 volcanoes, active volcanoes around it. It's a very spiritual place. And the leader of the group was describing how, her grandfather had spoken to her in the middle of the lake and all of this. And I'm like, okay, so this goes back to wanting to be woo, right? Being more woo woo. And we're in this middle of this lake, and all of a sudden, it was like this knowingness came in saying to me, you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Perfect. Yes. And isn't that, talk about humility? I mean, that is part of the message of the heroine's journey. You're like, you spend the first whatever, at least I did, I should speak for myself, kicking and screaming like a small child. I don't want this, go away, make it go away. I'm not doing this, like, nah.
Right.
And then finally you get to the point where you're like, okay, I'm just going to relax. I'm going to let what is be. I'm going to hold it lightly. I'm going to get curious and say, ooh, what about it? What's next?
Right.
So hard.
It
But
is.
yet, so the harder you fight it, the the more it's gonna fight back, and till it finally gets you there, is my experience.
I would agree with you. And this is, I just I was so struck at that moment with that feeling of just let it be.
Hmm.
So much so that on the way back, I had started to hum in my head, This Little Light of Mine. And then on the way back, I started to sing it quietly. And then all of a sudden, all the women who were on the boat were singing with me. And we kept singing. We got into the pool at the where we were staying. We sang for an hour and a half, all sorts of songs, But the This Little Light of Mine, I'm gonna let it shine. And that just kept
Hmm.
going over and over. And there's another thing that happened recently, which was I was asked what my intentions were, right? I'm a part of an intention circle. And I said, you know what? I just want to be, I'm at a place right now where I used to strive, right? Right? We got
Hmm.
to
Oh
go and we got to
yeah.
make it happen, right? We got to make it happen. And I always described it as like the mountain range that's in front of me. And I'm going to climb that mountain range. And then I'm going to go down into the next valley and I can see my path and I'm going to climb up to that next mountain range. And I'm like, crap, I just want to sit on the top of the mountain and I
Hmm.
want to look out
Hmm.
Be here now.
and be
Hmm.
here now, be in
In
present,
gratitude,
in gratitude,
in
and
appreciation, in
all of it.
in
Yeah,
thankfulness, and in just letting the pieces come together in me instead of trying to put the pieces together outside.
right, right. I am enough.
I'm enough. Uh-huh.
It's interesting. We kind of started this conversation talking about Eat, Pray, Love. And listening to your story, I'm kind of reflecting on that. And I don't know if you consider yourself to have had an Eat, Pray, Love moment or moments, actually. But I listened to it and I'm like, the heart of that story and that message, I feel like resonates with what you have done and what has happened with for you.
It's been my own way,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Exactly.
Right. Like I think we look outside of ourselves so much as women, especially, right? Like, how do I fit in? How do I belong here? Especially if you're in corporate, like, how are you going to fit in there? Right. And
Yeah.
then all of this is about how do I fit in?
Into me authentically,
Yeah. Yeah.
not trying to make it up for the outside world, but authentically
Yeah.
looking for what is special and unique and treasured about yourself. So tell us, are you healthy today?
I am so healthy. I am so sexy. I tell you, I think I am happier than I've ever been.
Wow. Coming from that seriously depressed, seriously compromised place on a journey that has brought you to joy, prosperity, and freedom.
Yeah.
And tell us, why do you say that? How has it changed that you can say that now?
Well, first of all, I mean, um, you can cut stuff from this interview, right? From this podcast. I am a 17-year-old. I have this mind and the feelings of a 17-year-old caught in a 67-year-old body right now. There's a joy for life. Um, and I have fallen for a man who I'm not saying that this is the reason, but falling for him has been about me falling in love with myself more so than falling in love with him, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
That be right because I am saying shit that I would never have said to my husband. I was with Steve for 40 years and all of those, and during the young years and the being a parent and trying to figure all of that stuff out. And now I just know who I am.
Mm-hmm. And do you like
I
who you are?
I love who I am. And I want to be more, and I want to have more, and I want to continue to become a woman of substance and continue to grow. Um,
And
and
you're
I'm
still
very
working at 67, which must mean that you're very passionate about your message of in women beyond.
belong. Yeah. Women belong. It's the most, it is a passion business, right? I can't, when we opened a couple of weeks ago, we opened the Hong Kong or Southeast Asia Global Circle for Women Belong. I'm like, oh my God, we were just going to be this small little group of 12 women in Chicago, and now we're in Hong Kong, and we got members in Canada and Spain, and wait, what?
Mhm,
Yeah, I
mhm.
want more
And
because I
what is,
love connecting women. Like, isn't that the most important thing? Is
uh-huh,
helping each other grow?
uh-huh. What is it that's so particularly personal to you about it? I mean, what inspired you starting it? Was it because,
Well, it was probably driven a little bit by the political landscape back in 2016, 2017, that we really felt that it was time for women to come together and to support each other in a way that we didn't feel like we were supporting each other.
mhm,
That perhaps that was part of it. But the big part of it was really that in corporate America, I never felt as though I didn't feel like I belonged, right? I'd be in a meeting and
mhm,
an officer meeting, and the other gentlemen in the group were only gentlemen, would start talking about Clemson, and I'm like, what sport are we in? What season are we in? Are they good? Are they Division 1 team? I right? And
mhm,
like I never felt like I fit in. I'm like, can't we talk books or movies or something else, right?
mhm.
So I could feel like but I didn't feel like I had the language to
Truth
fit
be told, we didn't fit in.
in.
They
No.
didn't want us. We didn't fit in. They didn't want to pay us the same amount. They didn't think we were as smart or as talented. And they were kind of irritated that we even had to be in the room.
I will tell you something. I met with one of my old bosses, and this man is very wealthy man and has done very well. And I was started to tell him about Women Belong, and he said, "Well, let me tell you what the problem is for women in business." I'm like, seriously?
Mhm. And what was his answer?
I said, you need to stop.
Mm.
Uh-huh,
Let me tell you.
uh-huh,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm, uh-huh.
So anyway,
So do
Well,
you think it's changed?
I think that there are parts of it that are changing. I mean, I can only observe it from seeing my daughter and her friends and how they are navigating things. I think some of it's shifting. I hope
Mhm,
it is. I hope that we are building stronger daughters who can have stronger voices. And
mhm, mhm.
I think COVID had a huge impact there as well,
Uh-huh.
because people are talking about self-care more. There's a whole huge shift. Um,
Mhm.
is it where I would want it to be? I don't know.
I
But to
tell you what I hope happens. I hope women stop going into the corporate sandbox where
me,
those guys made up the rules, they put in the money, they took the risk, and they made it that way. So anytime we step into that sandbox, we have to play by their rules. They made up the rules. What I hope is that women will claim their self-worth and their voice and start their own businesses, and
I
that those businesses will be under a different set of rules with a different objective in how we're going to help society and ourselves in the process, and that I think we'll create whole new enterprises from a different point of view that will serve in the economy in ways that we've never seen before. But that has to be when we decide. You and I said, oh my God, I'm going to jump into that sandbox. I'm going to wear the man suit. I'm
Yeah.
going to, I try to play by the man rules. And, at some point that just fails because I'm not a man. Like, it failed for me. And at that point, what I hope is to have the courage and the strength and the self-love and all the things that we're talking about that build our self-worth so that we actually step into enterprise in our own right. And then we don't have to compromise. We don't have to try to fit in a sense. We can stand out.
I would propose that we look at it as a both and, that we need to both build our own businesses and carry our own swords or tampons or whatever we're going to be carrying forward, right? But we need to have more women businesses and more women businesses supported and funded.
Uh-huh.
I absolutely agree. But I also think that we are half the population. And so part of my responsibility, I think, is to educate my son, my guy, on how to incorporate and validate and to share when the microaggressions are happening, because they happen every day.
Yeah.
Right. If I hear one more man say, that guy was such a pussy, I get so angry. And I'm like, no, to quote Betty White, right? Pussies take a pounding.
Yeah.
They are strong. Yeah. Talk about balls. We can have a whole nother conversation. Right.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm sorry to get a little off, but you know what? I think it's really important for us to pull people in and have that conversation. That's the toxicity is in us not raising our voices and not being aware, right? How much of it was, Joan, that we weren't aware, right? Until we came together with and talking about the heroine's journey. Until we started having those conversations, most of us are like, oh, that's the way it is. There's something wrong with me.
Yeah. And that's the fundamental fallacy. There's something wrong with me.
Right.
Like you sang that beautiful song, I would say to myself over and over again, at the time that it changed for me, just as you described, I would repeat to myself over and over, I'm a child of God. I was made in perfection. We didn't come roaring down the birth canal and they stamped some approved and some disapproved. No, fundamentally I'm sound. Now I just need to figure out how to use what I have.
Right.
And use it in a direction that I can love my life. Because there was so much that happened to me culturally, in the family I grew up in, where I diminished myself. But when you all got together, I love that analogy of you. I just have this beautiful picture of you in the pool, just singing that all together, because what reinforcement you were giving each other. And I would guess that was a real turning point in your life. You got out of that pool and you said, it was almost like a baptism. You got in the pool, sang the song, you got out of the pool, and you said, oh, no, I'm different now.
I don't sing out loud in groups, right? I don't even do karaoke. So like, yeah, it was like there was something moving inside.
And you changed at that moment. And you really decided to own your life. Because as soon as we put our light under the cup or the cover, we don't it doesn't shine. But then you decided, no, I'm going to step out, and I'm going to step out for all of it. I'm going to step out for my health. I'm going to step up for how I can serve. I'm going to step out for how I can really truly enjoy my life. I'm going to step out for who I surround myself with so that I can laugh and play and have joy and entertainment. You stepped out. You were no longer willing to step in.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You can't hold me
Which
back.
is beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, there was one a little funny story, I guess. When there was one guy that I was, like we were going through that whole dating thing after Steve passed, and there's this one guy on the fourth date. He turns to me and we're at a restaurant, and he asks me how, what I think, right? And I'm like, I think the food's fine. He goes, no, about us. I'm like, oh yeah, no. And he goes, why? And I said, well, because yeah, you keep things secret. I need someone who's transparent. I need someone who shares.
Uh-huh.
And I said, well, what do you think? He goes, well, I told you that my late wife had a big personality, right? And I said, yeah. And he said, did anyone ever tell you you have a big personality? I'm like, nope. I don't think anybody's ever said that. It may be true, but I don't know. He goes, yeah, I'm looking for less.
Oh,
Wow.
wow. But
Right.
how truthful, how authentic.
Right.
You
And
didn't try to make it work. You acknowledged where it was.
what was I thought was fascinating was like I didn't think that, right, like I didn't know that me being me was too much.
And
That makes sense? Yeah.
yes, you did, because don't you remember back when we went to work and they said they called us aggressive and
A bitch.
um,
Yeah.
all that stuff? It usually began with an A. And
Yeah.
every time you heard it, you were kind of like, I'm so sorry, I'm wrong. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry, there's something not about me.
Yeah.
But I'm so happy that you are living fully in all of it, because you're not too big, honey. In fact, I think you should get bigger.
Okay. Let's do that. Let's do that together, okay?
I think bigger and bigger is a good way to go.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I think that there's so many people out there that need so many women out there that need the message, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
And
have a, sorry.
Go ahead.
no, go on,
No, I was
Heroine.
going to say, this is a question for me. So you in your space now can hear that guy say that I need a little bit less, or I need, you know, something quieter or something, and you can go, okay, yeah, that's not me. That's not going to be me. It's never going to be me.
Mm.
Was that something that changed for you as you came into your heroine's journey, or was that something that you feel like you always had that confidence in self, so to speak?
Are you kidding?
Mm-hmm.
No way. I remember sitting in the car. I had been married to Steve for, I don't know, 30, 40 years at this point, 30 years. And I didn't even ask to go to a movie that I wanted to go to. Like, how many times did I sit on the things that I wanted and didn't say them because I thought I knew what the answer was, or I was afraid of what the answer was? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's like, if I want something, I think it's important for me to say it because nobody's a mind reader,
Mm-hmm.
at least nobody I know yet. But
But culturally, we were taught that, and we didn't want to disrupt our relationships. And
right,
because belonging, as to your passion, is one of women's most important things.
yeah,
We want to belong. It's inherent in us.
yeah,
But it doesn't mean we can't belong without having a voice as well.
right.
That's
Well,
the key.
well,
And
because we're more trustworthy then, aren't we? If we
I
are using our voice, you know, how many times do you hear someone say, "I can't tell them that," or "I can't say that," or "I can't," and it's like, why? By not sharing, do you think they don't know?
mm-hmm,
Because they pick it up,
mm-hmm,
right? They men, they children, all of the people that we're trying to, hide our stuff from, they all pick it up.
mm-hmm. And I fundamentally believe, as part of my life, that life is and not or.
I agree. I'm a both and woman, not an either or.
Exactly. Me too. Me
Yeah.
too.
Do you
It's
find
been
your do you find
Go ahead.
yourself, I guess I'm sorry, I'm caught on the whole thing. Do you find yourself now, as it becomes so natural for you to step into yourself, to voice yourself, that you don't celebrate it? Or do you still find yourself, like, when you're like, yeah, that's not going to be me, and you're like, go Dorothy?
There are times when I decide not to say what I'm thinking in
Mhm.
that moment, and I share it later on when I'm feeling safe. Or in the case of with Charlie, when we're in a locked car together.
Yeah, that's a good place.
Right. he can't run away. We have to address what it is. So I don't know if that answers it, but there are times when I still self-edit,
Mhm.
right? But I'm choosing when I'm editing too. I'm more conscious of the fact that, I mean, I had such a desire to please all the time and to fit in and to belong and to have people think I'm smart or whatever it is, right? That I would self-edit all the time but squash it and put it in a box.
Well, and
Now,
I would say to you too, you've just changed your perspective. Because in the past, you chose what you wanted to say based upon how you thought it would create a perception on the outside.
mm,
Now you have much more internal focus. And so you're really focusing and saying, what's authentic here? What do I need to say? And sometimes authenticity includes not saying something in the moment because it could be done later or it's inappropriate or whatever. Okay, we
right,
call that our inside voice.
right.
But in the meantime, I think it's really a shift in focus from really trying to manage and control and engineer what's going on in the outside and how you want people to perceive you versus coming from the inside where you're then saying, this is authentically me. I'm really sorry if it's going to ruffle your feathers in some way, but you might as well know it right now because this is me. I am loud and boisterous and I like it.
Yeah.
You know? And
Yeah.
if you don't, you'll find somebody who's quiet.
Right. Yeah. Go find someone who's less. Yeah.
Yeah. We're so delighted to have you today. It's just been
Yeah.
lovely. Your thoughts and your inspiration guide us. We'd like to have people look up your website at womenbelong.com.
That's
right?
right. Yep.
Is there anything you'd kind of like to leave us with in our podcast here?
I just think that we have such an opportunity here, all of us, right? And that if you don't know where you're at on the journey, check out Joan's book but the self-reflection and the curiosity that we come to within life is really the most important thing. Having a growth mindset, I think, and understanding that most people come with goodwill, right? That people are here they want us to be happy, right? For the most part, I think that people want us to be happy and want us to be successful. So let's just ride on those wings and to Erin, to your point, let's celebrate the hell out of it, right?
Yeah.
And let's brag about our experiences and share. I mean, sharing to me is the most important thing we could be doing. And so I thank you both for this opportunity to share my story and also that we can take this further.
Absolutely. Erin, what are your thoughts?
I love it. And I love how I feel like what we've been talking about circles into like what you're doing with Women Belong and the networking side of it. Because I know for me, that's always been a really challenging thing. And being able to walk into it authentically and connect and support it's so powerful. It's so powerful.
Erin, we've started a Southern California. Come visit us.
I definitely should.
Yeah, we have a generous guest policy, but whether people join or not, for me, that's not the important part. It's for them to come together and connect with each other. So, yeah.
Well, Dorothy, I look forward to seeing you soon. And for everyone who's been listening to us, thanks for joining us today. We so love these conversations. We're just of the belief that as we claim our self-worth and our voice and speak up, and there are so many questions under the rug that women, Erin and I just scratch our head and we say, and women don't talk about this and they don't talk about that. So we're delighted that we can be on this podcast, that we have freedom of speech, and that you'll join us each week as we explore more and more. So journey onward.
That is this week's episode of The Heroine's Journey. You can access the blog post for this episode along with other great resources at walkthejourney.com. Also, get your free ebook at walkthejourney.com so you can say goodbye to just surviving and turn into thriving. Join us next week for another fun, inspiring, and uplifting episode. If you love this episode, feel free to subscribe and give us a review on iTunes. Stay in touch on other social media platforms, Instagram and our Facebook group, both at The Heroine's Journey LLC. Until next time.